Clerk, would you please call the roll?
City Attorney Doctor.
Here.
City Manager Burton.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Commissioner Reed. Here. Commissioner Sherwood.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem D.
Here. For the record, the mayor is engaged in other commission business out of town, but we'll be back next week. Welcome. Thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission Administrative Meeting. We are pleased to be able to provide this alternative meeting format in the city's efforts to broaden public participation. Please be patient as we may experience technical difficulties during the meeting. We welcome your public commentary during the meeting. Please read the following tips and guidelines for app usage and your participation. I do have, so first move to commission comments. Briefly, just want to note that members of the commission attended the Man Gulch Fire Centennial Tunnel ribbon cutting ceremony on Monday, August 5th. Due to the memorial and celebratory nature of this event, no city business was discussed and no decisions were made, but we wanted to ensure that we notified the public if there was any business forum during that ribbon cutting, but no city business was discussed. Are there any other commission comments or questions? Commissioner Shurtleff.
Mayor Pro Tem. Recently we received a letter from a constituent who was concerned about dogs at the farmers market. I happen to be on the farmers market board. I've reached out to the market manager. I've also reached out to city attorney doctor. I'd like to ask city attorney doctor briefly, does the city have a leash law? And since the farmers market is on public right of way, does the farmers market have the ability to tell individuals what they can and cannot do with their dog?
Commissioner or Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Shurtleff, it is a city right away, a street basically where the farmers market is allowed to have a non-exclusive permit to do work, to close the streets, but it doesn't cease being a right of way just because it's a non-exclusive use. In fact, it is required that the public still be able to use that portion of the street when closed for that purpose. David Konopke, Director of Transportation, could actually speak to that as well. They do the issuance of the permits, and there is a leash law as well. So there should be on a leash law there. There is some difficulty with keeping people who are just on a walking on the city sidewalks and have to go through that area to keep them from using what is supposed to be accessed by the public. And that's part of the reason why there's no prohibition on dogs in that area. But I would defer to Director of Transportation if there's anything further that I missed.
Mayor, Commissioners, that's all correct. Typically for events, it's closing the streets to vehicles, not pedestrians. So in this case, the sidewalks are required to be maintained open and free and clear so that there's ADA access along the sidewalks. And then obviously the way they set up the farmers market, they need to keep that open for emergency responses and the pedestrians to walk.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Shurtleff, I've not seen the copy, especially the copy.
Okay. Comments or questions? Great, we'll go ahead and move on to board appointment review. We have before us board appointment for Helena Citizens Council District 5. I think that was on the old agenda. Let's update. We'll have, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, Mayor Pro Tem. For the record, Ben Kuiper, Chair, HCC. So last administrative agenda, you discussed the applicant Katie Ryan for District 5. Through some sort of oversight, no big deal. It didn't show up on the Wednesday agenda, so I think this is just repeating that process. So,
any comments or questions from the commission? All right, we will go on to the recommendations for Helena Citizens Council, Davis Street dust abatement and new speed limit. Chair Kuiper.
Okay, so last I believe it was last Wednesday we met. And this issue was brought to us through a member of the public. And it concerns the dust abatement on the trail system that the city owns that is adjacent to South Davis Street. So we recognize that just a few days before we reviewed that recommendation that the city did put down magnesium sulfate. We recognize that and we appreciate that. According to the residents in that area, that abatement hasn't happened in quite a while. So our recommendation was that that happens at least once, twice a year, and that the dust issues that the residents and the recreationists there are experiencing be taken into consideration. There was also some issues brought up concerning the speed of people that drive that area. It contributes a lot to the dust pollution because they aren't following the posted speed limits. Our recommendation was to decrease the speed limit to what we understood was a historical speed limit. I believe 15 miles an hour. If we're incorrect on that, we'll yield to staff. But our recommendation was to reduce the speed and then introduce some sort of signage to inform the public that they are going too fast. If they are, we understood that there was a fiscal impact on that if we do want to put signage in there. So we just wanted to leave that as a suggestion. But that was the gist of our recommendation. I know that we have members of the public here today that were participatory in this process and would probably like to give extra comment, but that's our brief overview.
Any questions or comments from the participants? I wonder,
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Director Chaffee, do we know, was the historical speed limit there 15?
Mayor Pro Tem Commission, I'm not sure. They had some areas that were slower because of the narrowness of the roadway before they widened it a little bit. Right there where you dive off into the bike park. And we can look into that, but typically city streets are posted at 25 miles an hour. There's special circumstances to lower those speed limits. We'll look into that as well, but along with new speed limits comes with the enforcement side of it as well. So that always comes hand in hand, and it is difficult for enforcement to happen out there. And if you don't enforce, as you know, then people just get used to, if they are exceeding the speed limit, they get used to doing it without consequence.
Director Kanafi, can you talk a little bit about we have done this spring this year, but can you maybe talk a little about some of the budgetary impacts of that piece? And then I know one of the conversations that's happened that's not in this recommendation, but had been what would it be like to use the city's portion of that? And so I want to talk a little bit more about some of those.
Mayor Pro Tem Commission, I'll start with the paving one. That would be, millions of dollars to pave that, because to bring it to current standards, and there's a lot of improvements that would have to take place. There's additional sections that need to be widened. The base there seems to be pretty good, so we might not have to do a whole lot of base work, but just paving that stretch would be pretty costly. As far as years past with the application of the dust control, the mag chloride, that was when I took over out at streets. It was when we had excess from the winter operations, and depending on how much we had was where it went. Some years we had a lot, some years we didn't have much, so we would have to cut it with water or what have you. And the last couple of years we've been being able to dial in on what we order, because materials cost, and just to have them sitting there. So we've been getting better and better at targeting how much actual material we need to order for a year. And then right now, because of our MS4 permit, we had to replace our tanks that we had and replace it with one double wall tank because of the containment required for magnesium chloride. So now, instead of one, or instead of 3 tanks, we only have 1. And so that limits the amount of mag fluoride that we have on hand at any one time.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Member Pro Tem. Just a follow-up question. Would it be possible, not immediately, but to look at a recommendation from the Transportation Department about how best to mitigate dust on this corridor? The data about the increased usage due to recreational use is quite impressive. So to hear what your recommendations would be for management, budgetary constraints and other things in order to sort of have an annual plan for what we're going to do there, as opposed to if we have a full spray.
So Mayor Pro Tem and Commission, we already took a look at that. And, you know, it was my opinion that we can't just look at Davis because there's other corridors in Helena itself that the adjacent property owners pay for the dust mitigation. The city goes and preps and waters it right before the application is made by a private company that the adjacent property owners split amongst themselves to get dust control. So what we did was, if we're gonna apply dust control to one, we apply it to all. So with that, just the material cost, not staff time, would be about $75,000 in mag chloride. Some streets may not need it every year, but we would have to, monitor that from year to year. Other streets, obviously, with the higher traffic volumes, would need the mag every year. And, right off the cuff, we would go in the spring and knock down the washboards or whatever. And then once I don't like using this term around here because it's not, rainy season. It goes by because, once we get rain, then, the washboards show up again. So once the rainy season was by, we would come back, prep it, and grade it and prep it for an application. And that would probably be in late June, July-ish. So you would probably see one application. The first initial years, towards the end of the summer, depending on how hot it was, you might see some dust coming up, but that can be mitigated by re-wetting the road surface and reactivating that mag fluoride. And then over the years, once you build up a kind of that residual in the road itself, you might be able to get on some of those other smaller volume roads a place where you're doing it every other year or every 3 years. It just we'd have to monitor the situation to see how it would be. But right now, with today's cost, that's what the budget impacts would be, excluding the staff time and equipment costs.
And no further comments. Is there any public comment on this topic?
Public comment?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, thank you very much. My name is Kevin League. I'm at 650 South Davis Street, and I was the one that worked with the Helena City's Citizens Committee to bring this issue to the forefront. So airborne dust from the 1.5 mile long Davis Gulch Road is negatively impacting the health and safety of recreationalists along Helena's second most popular entry into the South Hills Trail System. This is second only to the Mount Helena Trailhead for reference. The University of Montana in 2017 estimated that during a 5-month period, over 11,000 people, or 20% of all South Hills Trail users, began their recreational endeavors from Davis Gulch Road. Out of the top 5 most popular South Hills trailheads, Davis Gulch is the only access via dirt road. All others are paved and therefore not negatively impacted by road dust. Average annual vehicle traffic on Davis Gulch Road has increased 50% over the past few years to over 800 vehicles per day. For reference, 800 vehicles per day is comparable to the paved highway from Helena to Unionville. The city's over decade-long tradition of biannual dust treatment on the first half mile of this 1.5 mile long road was abandoned in 2021. The remaining 1 mile of road further south remains untreated year after year. Due to the lack of dust abatement, a high amount of traffic, and its steep topography, Dust tends to be dense and get trapped along Davis Gulch Road, directly impacting the safety and health of recreationalists and downstream residences year-round. The City of Helena has encouraged the public to recreate along Davis Gulch Road with commendable new recreational investments along its route. They include a recently renovated DeFord and Old Shooting Range trailheads. Those renovations at the trailheads include new kiosks, signing, fencing, vault toilets, ADA accessible concrete parking, and wheelchair charging stations. 2 recently renovated bike skills parks. These are commonly referred to as Upper and Lower Davis Bike Skills Parks, are parallel to the road as well. And a brand new 1.5 mile long universal access trail that parallels the Upper Davis Bike Skills Parks is popular with the ADA community as well as the families with kids. And of course, Davis Gulch offers a variety of access to all of the popular trails that access both Mount Ascension and the Rodney Ridge trails. The city's also provided additional encouragement to the public to recreate along Davis Gulch Road by permitting trail runs, bike races, and commercial endeavors such as trail shuttles. South Davis Gulch Road becomes a significant entry point for tourists and visitors to experience the natural beauty of our city. However, the unsightly and unhealthy and dangerous clouds of dust obscuring this busy road and the trails tarnishes the scenery and overall appeal of the area, in my opinion. Finally, Helena gets a bad rap for poor air quality, and that's mostly associated with wildfire smoke, and that feels like it's out of our control. Poor air quality along Davis Gulch Road is a problem with a simple solution. I urge the city to implement the speed limit and dust abatement recommendation brought forth by the Helena Citizens Council. Thank you for your time and consideration of this issue. And just one clarifying note, the city has done a commendable job of doing the dust abatement historically along the first 1/2 mile of this 1.5 mile long road. The additional 1 mile of road, which actually parallels the majority of the infrastructure that I just mentioned, has not been treated and produces an immense amount of dust. So I want to make sure that that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any public comment online?
Mayor Pro Tem, I do have 2 hands raised. Susan Steffens is up first in the queue.
Steffens, go ahead. Ma'am. Ms. Steffens, we can't hear you in the room. So if you would like to put your comments in the chat, we can read them into the record.
Next online, Mayor Pro Tem, I have Nathan Billiou.
Mr. Billiou?
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So my name is Nathan Billiou. And I also like
Technical difficulty. Sound.
Which this is why we read our notice at the beginning of every meeting. For those folks online, we cannot hear your public comments in the room. We will work on correcting that, but I think in the meantime, if you'd like to put your comments in the chat, and if we can get the sound sorted out, we'll come back to you after the next item.
Yes, it's on the go.
This opens.
Thank you. Sure, Andrea opens. I just wanted to comment and speak a little bit about the trail usage and value study from 2017. I would be happy to supply that trail usage study if that could be helpful at all. But a couple of things to point out are of the users in this study, 70% of them are located in Lewiston Park, Broadwater, and Jefferson counties. So while we do have visitors using the outdoor rec here and using our trails, this study reflected that the majority of them are local residents. On top of that, it did touch on how they're accessing the trails. and 36% of them were using their personal vehicle, where 38% were once using the Trail Rider Shuttle. With the Trail Rider Shuttle no longer available, just echoing that traffic would have increased, in addition to post-pandemic outdoor recreation of the state. Thank you.
Madam Clerk. Mayor Pro Tem, if I could ask Ms. Stephens to attempt to use her mic again. Ms. Stephens, let's give it one more try.
It's like you're still on mute.
Hey, Mayor Pro Tem, could we ask Mr. Billiard to try?
Mr. Billy, would you mind taking yourself off mute?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah, so my name is Nathan Billieu, and I live at 595 South Davis Street, so along a portion of Davis Street that is unpaved. And I also just wanted to submit a comment in support of the increased dust mitigation efforts that have been proposed, and just wanted to add that when the dust levels are high, it's a particular burden on those that have asthma. One of my daughters has asthma, and I've noticed this summer, particularly at times when the dust is high, if we're out mountain biking or walking on the trail, but when it's rush hour, so to speak, between 4 to 6 and the dust is high, my daughter can hardly use the trails right along the road just because the dust inflames her asthma and she has asthma attacks. So just as the city has done a lot of great work to increase the accessibilities to trails and the parks up there, dust mitigation would help ensure that, you know, folks in the community that have different breathing impediments, whether it's asthma or other kind of pulmonary issues, that reducing the dust would help them have equal access to enjoy those trails and recreation opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment?
Mayor Pro Tem, I have no other public comment for hands raised. I do have a written public comment if you'd like me to. Sure. Oh, actually, forgive me, that one was actually Nathan Billiard, so I believe he's had his opportunity to make his comment.
Great. We will go ahead and move on to the next item. Before we do that, I think Director Kanaki, sounds like we're already moving in a direction to evaluate budgetary impacts and how we can address that. I would be interested in maybe exploring what reducing the speed would look like and what ability we have there.
Mayor Pro Tem will do.
We'll move on to the city manager's report.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, I've got a couple items. And I'd like to start with the letter that you have in front of you today. As you know, we heard a report at the last administrative meeting from the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. We had a Zoom meeting this afternoon with Dave Strohmeyer, County Commissioner from Missoula, who's the chair of the authority, and Dan Budd, who chairs of the Government Relations Committee. And it verified everything that you had in your presentation a couple of weeks ago. Following or concluding that presentation, if I recall correctly, the mayor and the full commission is interested in pursuing or continuing to look at a municipal partner relationship with the authority. They've since changed that municipal partner designation to a government partner designation. Our annual cost to participate would be $4,000. So the draft letter to become a government partner is in front of you. There's consensus. I think we can engage the mayor upon his return, sign the letter, and become a government partner if you so choose.
Commissioner Logan.
Yeah, Ms. Burton, what does that partnership mean?
Well, I think, as was talked about in the presentation a couple weeks ago, it lends credibility to the overall effort that the authority is working on with the Federal Railroad Administration. We saw the map in the route. We talked about the additional, I think it was $500,000 in grant funding to plan the startup of this passenger rail route. We would be obligated to a $4,000 contribution annually to help promote the authority's objectives. And they would be able to say the capital city is now a partner in this overall effort. So I think that would.
Don't follow up to me. So, but the ability to join the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authorities with the county commission, correct?
That is correct.
Right. Thank you.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I am in support of this. I think it's great. And it sounds like, based on your description, this is a similar type of thing to some of the efforts we did with the airport, where we would support their bids for new airlines. It's not exactly apples to apples, but it's a similar effort where we are committing to a winning proposal. And much as I agree with supporting our airport, I think this is very much an effort I would like to get behind, so I would support moving forward.
Mayor Pro Tem, I think that those are very comparable.
Any other comments? Commissioner Sherwood.
Thank you very much. I've heard from a couple of constituents that they're very in favor of this, and questions for city manager. With that, I also get questions about what would be the cost in terms of impact taxes. Is there any that we know of at our level or at county level what the impact would be?
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, at this point, our financial contribution would be $4,000 annually as a city. We would, and I fully anticipate we will engage the county commission to let them know what your actions would approve of this letter of participation. And I think further definition to how that would work with the county's participation is yet to be.
Commissioner Sherwood.
I'm in favor of this. I think it makes sense, and I think we need to take this step to engage the county. I'm in favor of this.
Just comment. So, Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, I think it's important to understand all of this does have accident authority by state law. And that's what the crux of the matter is with the county commission is what's that mean to Lewis and Clark County residents? So, I mean, I'm supportive of the association of $4,000, but I think it's important for all of us to understand that there's no, as far as I can tell, there's no clear funding mechanism for the rail authority, for the rail improvements, the infrastructure, the operational, the operation of the rail or anything of that nature. There's no clear funding authority at this point, but what is clear is state law that indicates that the Big Sky Passenger Rail does have the legal authority to levy to counties and their electorate ultimately decide that. But it's more, I think, than just saying yes. And I think we all need to have that clear understanding as we wrestle with this.
Yeah, and Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner, I would also add that, as was presented a couple of weeks ago in our effect today, this is the route and the only route that's been approved by the Federal Railroad Administration at this point. Substantial grant monies have also been coming toward this effort, at least the planning effort. If I recall, it was somewhere around $500,000 that the authority received. So I think we walk before we run. But at this point, do you want to expand the City of Helena's partnership in this effort as we walk down that road?
And I'm part of our membership here. I think that at least us being at the table gives us an opportunity to talk about and some of the other concerns that have been brought up and taking that path forward, particularly providing some effort to get better governance for this project. But I think, the concerns are valid, but I think that we're unable to actually impact the conversation if we're not at the table. And this gets us to the table.
Mayor Pro Tem, we talked about that today with Commissioner Strohmeyer and Dan Fox. Being at the table is probably pretty critical at this point, because even though the route goes through Helena, there's still a cost benefit analysis that's taking place that would make more sense to run that route through you. So at least we would be at the table and be able to engage in that conversation. And it could be that it goes through both communities. That whole cost benefit analysis we're talking about right now. It's interesting too that with the creation of our new transportation organization, the city of Missoula is incorporating rail transit into their LRTP. And I think that we could consider that as we update our LRTP as well. So I'm understanding that there's consensus among the commission. Go ahead and sign this letter and send it.
Yes.
Very good.
Okay.
And Mayor Pro Tem, one final issue, I'd like, with your permission, to invite Director Canopy to give us an update on the downtown intersection where the lights got right. We talked about lightning.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners, yes, as we all know, the lights have been out at the mini malfunction. Temporarily, we have stop signs in place to regulate the traffic flow. As the city manager noted, there was significant catastrophic damage in the box itself. We've been able to work with our partners at MDT to get a salvaged box from other projects. Unfortunately, we don't think that that's going to turn the lights back on. The wires in the back are actually melted into the conduit underground. To what extent is that the damage? We don't know. I mean, more than likely we would have to pull some wire to see if it would work. But ultimately, the age of that intersection, our contractor has worked with MDT repairing that same vintage intersection, and from that era they were steel pipe, so or steel conduit, so it could still be intact. It could be just holding itself together by all the rust that's in there, or it could be collapsed. If it's collapsed, then we have to dig up the entire intersection to run all new wire, which, our hopes was to dig up the entire intersection to potentially put a roundabout in there instead of, rewire the intersection. With that, we've heard a lot of feedback from people that use the intersection. I think the motorists and the majority of what we've heard like the new configuration, because you're not waiting for a leg of the intersection that has nobody sitting there. We have heard concerns about pedestrian ability to cross. I've been down there a few times. Since we put up the stop signs, I have not witnessed the difficulties. There were, some hesitation, but I watched a person in a wheelchair cross, and everybody stopped. Nobody went through. I saw, so regardless, not dispelling those concerns, we approached MDT, since it's technically their jurisdiction, on keeping the stop signs, but also improving the pedestrian awareness. MDT yesterday gave us their approval to keep the stop signs in the interim, knowing that we are hoping to fast track the design and construction of the roundabout downtown. With some caveats, we'd have to follow METCD and review if there's issues that come up. What that would entail would be either bagging the signal heads themselves, or taking them off the mast arms completely, so that instinctive look up at a signal head is not there. We would permanently install stop signs so that they were at the normal height of a stop sign, and then we would add pedestrian signage for drivers to acknowledge the fact that there are pedestrians using that intersection as well. So since we just got that nod from NDT yesterday afternoon, we haven't got a long ways down that road to see what that would look like. But that's where we're at right now, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. A comment as opposed to a question. I think if it's going to be quite a while before a permanent solution, which sounds like it will be, if possible, and I don't know if this is any faster, what the process would look like, but I go through that intersection sometimes, and from certain angles, it's a little more treacherous as a pedestrian. People coming down the hill, if you're trying to cross to get onto Last Chance Gulch, cars don't always see you. So if we could consider rapid flashing beacons or illuminated stops, or some way for cars to be aware that they may not see the pedestrian because of the angle they're coming at. I think that would be good, because if you're a runner and like dusk and dawn, it's a little scary. And the little stop signs are not, I think they're not a particularly reassuring thing to have if this is going to go on for some time. So I would just ask that we consider the different parts of the intersection.
So, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners, we were going to use enhanced stop signs, which would potentially, you may have the LED around the octagon to, greater say, hey, you're supposed to stop. We'd have the red reflective on the post itself. And then also the same for pedestrian signs. We would have those, be brought to more of a forefront so that people wouldn't forget. As always, we can't solve all the problems, but we hope to mitigate the majority of the problems. And so we'll come back to you with another update once we come up with something more final.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Logan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Everything I've heard, almost everything has been very positive, which surprised the heck out of me. Did not. And the only concern one of the concerns that I've heard is, in the event something happens injury wise, vehicle or pedestrian, is there any, given that this was once a lighted intersection and now sort of a temporary arrangement, is there any additional exposure liability issues?
Mayor Pro Tem, Commission, we would, that's one of the things that we'll be sitting down with the city attorney to see if we have any greater exposure. But there are processes in place to remove signals, as we've done for a couple signals in town, and then returning them to a stop control or some other condition. So I think if we follow those procedures, and if the attorney and the manager didn't feel that we were exposing us to litigation, then I think we would just follow those processes that are in place. That's what they're there for. I think the signal warrants would show that that intersection probably doesn't warrant a signal anymore, or be very close. So I'd have to go back and check the study. So we'll work with the attorney and city manager to ensure that we're good to go with whatever option we come up with.
Thank you, Mayor.
That concludes my.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, City Manager. We will move on to presentations. First we have the Community Aid Grant and General Fund Savings update from Grant Administrator Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. Before I jump into the Community Aid Grant, I just wanted to provide a couple of updates on just general grant activity at the city. We did receive a letter last week that the raise grant application that we submitted to in February, which was not funded. We all know our neighbors in East Helena did receive a grant, which we are thrilled about. Of course, we were disappointed that ours did not move forward. However, we were notified that our application was recognized as a project of merit. And what that means is that it was highly rated on the list, but not funded. And so because we reached that status, that project will move forward, be carried forward for consideration for the next fiscal year automatically without us having to reapply, which is very encouraging. Additionally, and I'll defer to Director Knapke to hop in here, but we've had some recent conversations with the NSF, and they are interested in pursuing a railroad crossing elimination grant. It's a little bit of a misnomer, not necessarily eliminating a railroad crossing, but we would be looking at a grade separation study at Montana Avenue. We all know we've all been stopped by the trains. There's lots of trains, right? And it seems like more and more trains every day. So this would be taking a look at potential redesign of that space, whether it would be a tunnel or a bridge or something like that. And they are interested in partnering with us on that and funding that effort. So we would be the lead applicant, but they would be a partner providing financial support for that. That's very encouraging. So moving on to the community aid grants, I won't rehash how we got to this place, but as you all know, the city received a substantial amount of funding through COVID relief funds. That was then we were able to allocate general fund savings because we were it was revenue loss. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, so we were able to claim that as revenue loss, which created general fund savings, and then we were able to grant that out. We do have those grantees in the room today that still have open applications. I'll note that we have closed a handful of them. The Friendship Center property acquisition has taken place that they've satisfied all of their grant requirements via our grant agreement with them. The community share has also been closed. We bought their concrete, so here you go. The Kay McKenna Foundation was a simple donation to that fund, so that's been taken care of, as well as the Last Chance Powwow support. So those are all closed. Those folks are not in the room today. Additionally, we do not have an agreement yet in place related to the Business Improvement District restroom. As you know, that organization has been moving through some leadership changes. We don't yet have an agreement on location, maintenance, a handful of other things. So that also won't be spoken about today. And our Redeemers was unfortunately not able to be here today, or Rocky Mountain Development Council rather, were not able to be here today, so they'll be providing their update at the next administrative meeting. So up first, I'll ask our Tri-County Fire Safe Working Group, Amy, if you could provide your update to the commission.
Thank you. If I just sit at the table, please. Also with me is Lois Olson, who's the president of Tri-County Fire Safe Working Group, here for moral support. Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor, for our commission. Just a quick overview of the purpose of the program. The goal is to increase awareness, build trusting relationships, and motivate property owners to reduce their wildfire risk. And our outreach efforts focus on fire prevention, the home ignition zone, and evacuation preparedness. We kicked off this program just about a year ago, July 23rd, by the time all the grant paperwork and everything was finalized. And so the three areas that we focus on are planning, program management, and marketing and outreach. And I'd like to just kind of give you a brief overview of some of the products or deliverables that we've done the first year. So last summer we aired fire preparedness radio messages, and the mayors gave a read a script, fire marshal, fire chief, and Sean, did you?
I think I might
I
have.
think you may have. Yes, and those were more on educational and then directing people to Fire Safe Helena. We created a specific webpage domain, so you don't have to go through this tongue twister website. You can go straight to Fire Safe Helena and find it. We worked with Jake, who did a water bill insert in March. This summer, you may have seen our billboards, and we also had radio ads and TV ads. And Amanda, you want to show the TV ad? Please. Let's have audio with it.
Audio separately, everyone can type.
Curious, how many of you have heard the radio ads or seen the TV ads? Great. Interesting point is, so we've started tracking when we receive signups for our risk assessments. How did you hear about the program? And okay, we're ready.
Helena is a wonderful, safe community, but a risk looms large: wildfire. Fire Safe Helena, a partnership between Tri-County Fire Safe Working Group and the City of Helena, can provide you with a free wildfire risk assessment of your home and property. You do not need to live in the forest to be in a wildfire. Embers can ignite homes up to a mile away and devastate entire neighborhoods. Our fuel specialists will identify ways to reduce your wildfire risk and discuss an evacuation plan to keep you and your neighbor's properties safe. Get to firesafehelena.org today to protect your tomorrow.
Thanks. And those were going to be aired more in the late spring, early summer, with the idea of getting people to sign up and participate. We're also working with the Forest Service, the DNRC, and the Montana Urban and Community Forestry Association. They partnered with us, where they did a direct mailing talking about urban forest and directing them also to Fire Safe Helena. We've also are planning a speakers bureau for the fall with community representatives that have been impacted by wildfire. We want to bring them here and tell their story. One of the reasons we want them to tell their story is that we feel that Helena residents, unfortunately, are a little bit complacent when it comes to the understanding that we are at risk. Real quickly, the meat of this, our wildfire risk assessments. To date, we've completed 63. We're able to turn around an assessment very quickly. The assessments, once someone signs up for assessment, they're contacted by one of our fuel specialists. They schedule the time. They go out there and meet with the property owner. It's required that the property owner be there. The assessments take about an hour. And once they're completed, our fuel specialists go back and they wrap it up, and then they email it to the property owner. They're very specific to their property and includes pictures of their property and very specific recommendations. But the nice thing too is that this assessment has a lot of good recommendations for anyone and a lot of references. And just for fun, I printed out 3 that you can take at some point if you wanted to see what the property owner is using. I blocked out the name there. The assessment serves as a really good blueprint for a homeowner to take and say, okay, how can I start reducing my risks here? Whether it's to clear out the vegetation and to do some pruning, whatever it might be. Real quickly on our budget, we had a total of $143,000 to date. We have spent $45,000, so we have $98,000 remaining, and we have also matched it with $42,000. So we feel really good about that. Very quickly, just some of our observations and challenges. A majority of those who've signed up have heard about it through neighbors, friends, and the water bill insert. We have the signups for Fire Safe Helena separate from our other signups. our other signups, outside the Helena area are hearing about it through the radio ads, billboards, and TV. Don't get it. I don't get it. However, I guess that kind of confirms my suspicion that Helena residents are just a little complacent. The fire department would be there, that type of thinking. So that is probably our biggest challenge, is getting people to participate in the program. And we did a budget allocation in February and moved more of the total grant funding into marketing and outreach. So we're sure open to ideas on how to increase participation. And we'll continue to work hard. We're going to be doing a neighborhood shipping day in Prospect Heights this fall. Working with getting neighbors to work together, get the DNRC chipper out there so people can do their thinning and whatnot, bring it to the curbside, you chip it and take it away. We hope to be doing one of those. So that's my hopefully 5-minute report or 7-minute. Any questions? Happy to answer.
Yes, the city attorney has a question.
Mayor Pro Tem, this is just a curiosity because I know you're trying to get some marketing out. I don't know if you said whether or not there's a cost to the property owner in doing those assessments.
It's all free. It's all free, and it's included in our advertising and marketing in capital letters.
We did have a nice booth during all the mango activities this last weekend.
And also when we do an assessment, we leave that property owner with a half a dozen of these door hangers and ask them, take them around to your neighbors. And because oftentimes the biggest threat may not be on your property, it's your neighbor's property. And so I think this has been helpful too. And we've had a few spark plugs in different neighborhoods where they're going around and working through their homeowners associations and things. But unfortunately, the number still is only at 63.
Any other questions from the commission? Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Next up, we'll have Heather O'Neill from Exploration Works.
Sorry,
that's a very
educated. Let me just stand. So I'm Heather O'Neill from Exploration Works. We'll just stand here. So we received, or we will be receiving $26,000 for a grant to expand our facilities. If you've been to Exploration Works, you can see our second floor deck is open and exposed. So part of the grant funding is going to go towards enclosing that. Half of that will be a classroom so we can increase our programs and serve the community better. And then the other half of that is going to be a new exhibit space. So we haven't started construction. We're going to start construction in January. So.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioners, next we will have Kelly Posowitz with the Helena Regional Sports Association.
Hi, I'm just gonna switch on up here. Hi, I'm Kelly Posowitz. Thank you for your time today, Mayor Pro Tem and commissioners. Just to avoid any confusion, I used to be with Exploration Works. The last time I was talking to you, it was about this project. But I've now since shifted and I work with Helena Regional Sports Association, and I'm happy to give you an update on the work that we're doing there. We really appreciate your funding that we've received from you. So the money that we received from the city was to go to conduct 2 feasibility studies for the ARC, which is the proposed sporting and events center located at the fairgrounds. Just to refresh your memory, and for anyone in the room who's not familiar with the project, we're looking to put this complex, which is 280,000 square feet on the fairgrounds, and it will include a large-scale arena that seats 12,000 people, an aquatic facility with a recreation and competition pool, 2 turf fields, hard courts, a walking path, and team rooms, and officially it will be operated by the county. So that's the project that we're working on to move forward to help address the unmet health and wellness needs in our community. And so we conducted these 2 reports. The first study was with Highland Economics, and it focused on the economic impact of the ARC. And we were really have really positive results from that, which I sent the full report to the commissioners and the mayor earlier in May. And the highlights of the study, we learned that the ARC has the potential to bring in more than $26 million per year to the region and will support 330 jobs and $12.9 million in income annually. So it's a significant impact on our local community. Other key findings from the study show that the ARC would improve indoor recreational opportunities in our region and our state. And it would overall improve the quality of life in our area, which would help retain and attract residents. Furthermore, the ARC would facilitate improvements in health outcomes by increasing the availability of facilities and encouraging residents to be active, which could also have the potential to reduce healthcare costs in our community. So that was the first report that we conducted, and that one is completed. And the second report was with Ballard King and Associates, and it focused on the sustainability of the ARC once it's built. And this report was also very positive. In the report that I sent you, you'll see the chart that gives the 5-year projections of the facility here. And as you will see in the chart, that the ARC will be completely self-sustaining in year 1. So once it's built and it's up and operational, it'll be sustaining. Furthermore, we're projecting a surplus of $371,000 in the first year. This is after setting aside $425,000 into an improvement fund each year to help with, as you know, pools are expensive, so having all those costs covered. So if you look at the 5-year projection, by year 5, we're projecting a surplus of $688,000. And at that point, we would have $2.1 million in our improvement fund. So this is really encouraging for us. It was really important for the organization to only move forward with this project if we knew it was self-sustaining. We don't want to build it and then have to come back to the public for support over and over. So both of those studies are really encouraging for us to move forward with our project. We continue to look at other funding sources to help with the project. The price tag, as you know, for this is $120 million. So we're looking at private funds, corporate, federal opportunities, and trying to get as much support as we can before coming to the community for any kind of bond measure. If you know someone with $120 million that wants to fund it, call me, because that is my preferred method to fund this. But we'll just have to see how much money is available in the community. But it's really encouraging. So just to summarize, we have completed both of our feasibility studies. We've exhausted the funds. I'm just waiting on the final payments and the checks to go out, and then I will submit our final report. We spent $41,500 of our grant, so that leaves us with a balance of $6,000 that we don't plan on using. If there's any opportunity to apply for additional grant to help with any operational expenses for that remaining $6,000, I would love that, but I appreciate if that's not an option.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. Thank you, Kelly, for being here. And for that report, it was eye-opening. Are you actively fundraising for the ARC, or are you still in planning and feasibility?
So I'm actively fundraising. I hope to have some really exciting news in the next couple of weeks to share that will really help us move the project forward and start a significant leadership support to move it forward.
No spoilers to me.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry.
I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to jinx myself. So
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a question. Somebody asked me if the ARC is an acronym, and if so, what it stands for, and I did not have an answer.
Well, it was originally the Aquatic Recreation Center, but then it's evolved into so much more. But we kind of like the idea of the ARC because it's, sports, there's an ARC, there's a lot of different tie-ins with the name. So we're kind of going with it. But if someone wants to change the name down the road with enough money, we can change it. We're open. So yeah, no, that's a good question.
Seeing no other questions. Thank you very much.
Yes, lottery winners.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, next we would have Renee Bauer.
Renee? So I'm actually Renee. This is actually Teresa, and we are doing a joint presentation. And we, Good Samaritan. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I think it's easier for everyone to hear.
So, as you all know, it's been a wild ride for Good Samaritan and working with those in the streets. So we I want to make it perfectly clear, Good Samaritan works with those that are homeless on the streets, the most critical in our community, and those that need to find a way to better themselves or even their families to get to the next step in life. We know that people that are on the streets, they often are in crisis mode all the time for survival. So we're hoping to set that straight for women in our community to get them to a good place. When we applied for this grant, it was for a warming shelter, and we did decide to serve women. We were going to have that downtown, but that just didn't work out, and it's fine. That's fine, things happen. So we had to rewrite the grant because of the location. So we resubmitted the grant so that we could, when we found another place to be. And that was a real struggle. It didn't work. And we were 1 week away from having to submit for our government at the new location, and we still had nothing. So Renee and I have known each other for years and years. And I got on the phone with her one day, just so you'll get a little idea of how this happened. And I said, what do you think? If we pull our resources together to serve women, and we serve the women right off the streets, and then referrals to other agencies around the community, including Family Promise. And she was elated. She's going to come through the phone. So that's when the program started to go. That's when the shelter started to build and the excitement built, because we had this collaboration with someone. Renee was starting to work on plans and to build or add on to her program, her building. So we just thought this would be a good slide in for us. But what we did decide, though, at this initial point was we don't need two owners for the building. If we were going to put money into it, how would we do this? And I have to say the Chancery in Helena was a pivotal point in helping us come to these decisions. So we went ahead, Renee and I, and we called Commerce and asked them if we could transfer the money over to Family Promise and put the programs together. And like I said, this is when it started going. They were excited about that because it was a new model that hadn't been seen yet. So that's what we're doing. Renee had her pot of money, and we have our pot of money, which we are putting together to enlarge this facility for programming for women, children, families with Renee, and a crisis shelter setting for women on the streets. Crisis, we decided to go with women because there is no women's shelter. And women at this point have to be in a facility that sometimes they're laying on the floors because it's so full against people they don't know. That we want to be able to provide hand over hand services for them with other agencies. We are not going to do the counseling. We are not going to do any of that programming. There are professionals in this community, Family Promise, Friendship Center, YWCA, that we will refer the women to with a warm handoff to do that. So that's where we're at. We've gotten almost all our paperwork into Commerce. We're running by the seat of our pants right now. That's when you know it's a program that's supposed to be. So that's where we're at with this money. And do you want to say?
So yeah, at the time that we decided that we were going to collaborate, that changed a little bit of the face of what we were looking at doing with our reconstruction of our current facility. So we needed to become a little bit bigger, so we'd have a little bit more space to allocate it out, and then think about what happens during the daytime, what we do with people, and how we kind of organize and strategize with people. We think that we've made huge strides in a very short period of time. We're working on the plans, which have changed not a lot. We have a tight little itty bitty blueprint in the community. And because that lot is tight, it's taken some real creativity to come up with initial blueprints that will fit and serve all of the needs that we need served within the community. So we're close. We're close, and we're making good progress. And we're very excited today. 2 weeks ago, we were almost in tears because, there were little itty bitty things that hit you when you're doing a project of this size, but we've got them all figured out.
Something I'd like to make clear, because there seems to be some confusion, and we purposely did not go out to the public right away. One sense, I'll tell you, I I could not take another one. I had to make sure it was gonna go. And so we waited to let know what's gonna happen. But it's gonna be a really nice collaboration. Renee's ladies are still going, and families will still be staying in the churches unless she has overflow and there's not room. It's going to be a two-story building. One of us will be on top, one will be on the bottom. So we'll have our different populations. But then the women that are being served by Ruth's place will come in about 5:30 in the afternoon, pending the weather. If it's really cold, we'll always take that in consideration, and leave at 7:30 in the morning. Your ladies will come in, families.
We run our families in for overnight shelter at 7 p.m. and out at 7 a.m. And so we're not even going to have a lot of crossover in the hallways. Her people will be in at 7 before mine get there. Mine will be out before hers get up. It's going that work. That's one thing that really is going to work nicely because we've got that. I know it seems small, but that small variance in hours has made lots of things that we need to logistically think about pretty soon. And again, we're going to continue our church rotation sheltering too. So there will be, this is another exciting part, is that building will not sit empty during the day. There will be another program going into the building at 8:30 till 3:30 in the afternoon. So it's going to be used all around. So we're very excited about that.
Commissioner Lee. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry to interrupt the flow of the presentation. I have a question on this point. So the 8:30 to 3:30, is that our place?
Yes, but don't say that.
So is it?
It's not for public.
A place? It's a place?
It is. It is, but there has been so much confusion about everything that's gone on. We just decided to really narrow it down to focus on what's going to happen. Yes, it will.
Okay.
So, it's not downtown where we'd like it. However, we couldn't get there, but this is crazy. Things just started happening after we spoke. We got a van from the Department of Transportation. So we will have a van that can go out and aid people to get to where they need to go.
Any other questions from the commission? Congratulations on all the progress. Happy day. Okay. Hand opens. Any final thoughts?
Mayor Pro Tem, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Great. Before we move on to the next, we'll open up this section for public comment. Is there any public comment? Community based grants and general fund savings? Be online.
Mayor Pro Tem, I have no public comment on mine.
We'll go ahead and move on to our transportation systems capital traffic plan. Director Kanafi and Police
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Commission. I did want to start off that you'll see on the Monday's agenda that this item is on there. That date was inadvertently not changed because, as you will hear through this presentation, they're doing a public outreach and obviously won't be done by Monday. So we wanted to push the final meeting out past that public comments stage so that we had those gathered up and that we could let you know what the public comment was. But with us is Steve Biamonte and their consultants from Dow, and I'm going to turn it over to them to explain not only the traffic plan that we brought to you, the meetings that have been conducted since we last talked, and then the public participation plan that's for us.
So just to be clear, we will be asking for a tabling motion.
We will be.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the commission, good afternoon. Thanks for having us back in. Steve Biamonte, General Services. The administrator will be very quick. Yeah, we just want to give you an update and tell you where we are now with the public engagement process. And that's why we've asked that this moved to a further date on the city council. We want to get a resolution to this because if this passes, we do want to get this done before the snow flies, but we wanted to finish our public engagement process. And we have an open house coming up on the 14th. So that'll give us time for our consultant to conduct the open house, get the information, and then get a report back to you. So if you don't have any specific questions to me, I'd like to turn the time over really quickly to our consulting engineer, Shay Talley with Dowell, and she'll tell you about public engagement and also any specific questions about the actual project. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, thank you for having me here today. I am Shay Talley with Dowell, and we're assisting the General Services Division in this project. My understanding is that you guys have already heard a bit about this project, so I'm not going to go back through the details. The map is shown for anyone who has not seen it yet, but I just wanted to provide an update on the public involvement activities, which include a open house, as Steve mentioned, that is scheduled at the Department of Public Health and Human Services Auditorium on August 14th from 4 to 6 p.m. Public notice has been posted in the Helena IR, and we have sent out 170 postcards to residents and businesses in the immediate vicinity, advertising that open house, encouraging folks to show up. We brought some of those postcards today. They're located on a table over there for anyone interested. Also showed a little bit cleaner project map compared to what's shown on the screen. And we are opening the public comments for 2 weeks. That public comment period will close the week of August 19th. There is a QR code on the back of this postcard that will take you to a web page where you can fill out public comments online. Those are being collected online through a survey at that web page. So that is an update on the public involvement activities. Any questions? Just really briefly, I do have a question. Did this go out to the state employees who are in the Capitol complex?
Mayor Pro Tem, yes, I would add that in addition to what Dowell is doing, we also have a GovDelivery website that if it hasn't gone out as of today, it will be going out very soon. It has several hundred employees. Additionally, we also have a poster board that will be sitting in the Capitol, I think, by tomorrow, and it's also been noticed through any of our meetings that we have with employees. We have a weekly stakeholders meeting with all the Capitol stakeholders, and we've already given them notice starting about 2 weeks. So we are making a pretty concerted effort to make sure all state employees know. Thank you.
Mayor Brooklyn, thank you. Mr. Biamonte, thank you for being here. In the last meeting, we received some comment from some of the folks in the room from the Chamber of Helena and MBAC and others. After the meeting, I commend you for doing some outreach with them. Can you tell us a little bit about those follow-up meetings that you had with some of the concerned folks about the traffic plan?
Sure, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Sherlock. Yes, we've met with Chamber of Commerce, MBAC, and Visit Helena, matter of fact, we've met several times since then, just to make sure that we all understood, everyone's priorities and where we're all coming from. I think we've come to a really good understanding. And obviously they're here so they can really speak for themselves. I would say that we were fortunate enough to then be able to facilitate a meeting with the director of MDT, which we had yesterday, to make sure that what all of us are doing is in alignment with MDT's long-term plans for the proposed road diet for Broadway, as well as the Capitol Complex master plan, the long-term plan for that whole area. So I think that we've always had a dialogue, but I think that frankly, this time this project just kind of got ahead of ourselves. And again, we came to you guys last time just see where we needed to go before we engaged the public. And so, I apologize that we hadn't really reached out to them in advance, but I think that we're all on the same page now.
I just want to say thank you for that, for doing that follow-up. I think it made a world of difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a question. When you're doing the outreach, I know it's been raised, I think once at the last meeting and several times from residents who've reached out to me regarding the bike lane and the specifics around how it will be handled because of cars backing into a bike lane. So will the public outreach and information meetings talk about exactly how that will be set up, what the safety measures will be? Is that part of your presentation? It would be great if we could address that.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Reed, actually, I'm going to let Shay discuss that, but the very short version is that lane is actually quite a bit wider than an average lane. where there's then the dedicated bike lane. So it's actually gonna be a very safe bike lane. All the specs on that.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So as you can see, it's a little hard, I guess, to see here on the screen, but from the back of the parking stripes to the curb, there's 22 feet there. The bike lane takes up 6 feet of that. Standard traveling width is about 12 feet wide. And so that lane, as Steve mentioned, is actually wider than a standard travel lane, providing some extra buffer and visibility for cars backing up. But regarding your comment about, are we going to discuss this at the open house? We can be sure to make that point to folks that come in. And just a note, this open house is going to be, there's not going to be a formal presentation. It's just going to be open for people to come in and talk to us. But we can make sure to address any concerns that people have regarding the bike lane at that time.
Very great follow-up. To be clear, I'm not an engineer, but it has been suggested that there are ways to do not like a rumble strip, but a slight, marking of the pavement so that a tire would feel that they have entered what could be the bike lane. So I would be grateful to hear as we move forward what mitigation measures might be. As a person who bikes, it is a little scary when cars are backing at you because people hit the gas a little hard. You might like to do some tests.
Yeah, Mayor Commissioner, and as a bicyclist, and I bike that area as well, I fully agree with you. Our goal with this first phase of getting this done is to get this done as economically feasibly, or i.e. as cheaply as possible. So this project at this point is just solely paint and signage, but that is clearly something that we could look at down the road. As a matter of fact, if we could even potentially partner with MDT to do a rumble strip, I think it's a fantastic idea. We also looked at like a raised median. It's just that we want to present something that at least gets us in, again, to walk before we run, and then potentially phase in something down the road. So it is a very good suggestion. Thank you.
Any other comments? We did get a public comment today, I think it was yesterday, from someone that works in the Capitol building, but in their private capacity. And when I see their name, I pay attention. But one of the things that they brought up was the conversation around a parking garage for the Capitol complex. And from what I had understood years ago, there was supposed to be a traffic master plan put together for the Capitol complex, which I know requires the legislature to appropriate funding. But do you have any information that we can pass on to the public regarding that item?
Sure, Mayor Potem. There is a Capitol Complex Master Plan. The last one was conducted in 2010. By statute, a new one is due now. And so, I'm sorry, it was prior to 2010. But a new one is due now. And so the Architecture and Engineering Division is working on it. It's kind of on hold right now. But this is part of it, and the traffic plan is part of it. If you look at the current master plan, by 2010, actually, according to that plan, there should have already been one parking garage on campus, and probably by 2020, the master plan says that there should be 2. And if the master plan was actionable and enforceable, it would be fantastic, but it is solely just a plan. And so if the legislature doesn't approve any of it, we get nowhere with it. So I honestly don't know.
Call your legislator.
Yes, there's talks about parking garages, but that it would have to actually come through as a long-range building proposal. So.
All right. Is there any public comments on this item? Yes, please.
Hallie Ashton with the Helena Area Chamber of Commerce, representing our Vision Helena group, which includes MBAC and the TBID and the BID. Just want to thank GSD and Steve for the outreach. I take full responsibility for throwing a wrench in his plans last admin meeting when we had seen the article in the newspaper and reacted. But through these conversations, we've really been able to prioritize everyone's needs. We were able to work through some additional signage that will allow us to push some traffic into areas like our railroad district and our downtown area, which promote business growth in both of those areas. And we're very excited about that. So I think that, we are here to support him and the plan going forward. We'll be present at the public comment to talk about, sort of our stance on the issue as well. So just thank you for listening to us. the last meeting and grateful for the collaboration that's happening.
Any other public comment? Seeing no further public comment, we'll move on to our next item, which is the CMS Big Plan update. Take our director.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. This evening, we're providing you an update to the city's work with CMS on developing a market-based pay plan. I would like to introduce to you Jim Cairns, the managing consultant with CMS, and Caleb Lewis is also here as an HR consultant with CMS, and they are spearheading and facilitating this work with the city, and they will be here to provide the update. So, with your permission, I'll turn it over to CMS.
Thank you, HR Director McMahon. I appreciate it. Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, just want to kind of walk you through an update on where we're at with the pay plan revision. Quick recap, and I'll go through kind of quickly. So City Manager Burton or HR Director McMahon, feel free to jump in at any point if you feel like I miss anything important. I want to recognize Caleb. He did heavy lifting getting us here today too. So I'll take all the credit for the work. So this all kind of started with compensation philosophy, which you had in your packets. It was developed in August of 2022. And the compensation philosophy is really critical because it pretty much drives the design of the pay plan, drives the design of our classification system. So we use this as our guide through the work of this project. Just briefly today, I'm going to do a quick review of the project, give you a sense of our results findings. We have a proposed transition plan. We have a proposed communication plan. Then I'll brief you on the next steps, and I'll try to keep it quick. So the project review, we started out with a comprehensive salary survey and market study in 2023. We did a salary survey, actually surveyed other jurisdictions, other employers in the area of about 35 positions, and did a market study of about another 50. So we had pretty comprehensive coverage. We found that the actual incumbent wages for the survey titles was about 93% of the market. I think that reflected the fact that the city was having to hire a lot of people above entry. So, you know, your managers and HR were doing a good job of kind of reacting to the market or responding to the market, I guess, thoughtfully. We found that step 3 wages were about 88% of the market. So we were a bit behind, and we used that data to adjust our pay practices. Based on the study, the city did a 4% increase to the wage matrix. We reclassified some of the positions that were well below the market, and some of the ones where we had high priority, you know, potential flight risks with people leaving being so far below the market. So we tried to get positions to where they'd be at least 88% of the market at step 3. Still have some room to grow and a gap to close with the market, but we made great strides, and under the city manager's leadership and your leadership, we did a great job, I think, closing that gap with the market. Some of the characteristics of the current classification and pay systems is, you know, we start out with 5 different levels. You start out at step 1, then there's 4 steps of 5% each. So you realize about a 20% growth over your first 5 years. Then that pay progression stops. So folks, once they hit that step 5, wouldn't see any pay increases unless there was a cost of living or some sort of enterprise-wide adjustment implemented by the commission. There was only about a 2.5% increase from grade to grade. So as you moved up the matrix, you know, going up a grade was actually less of an increase than just sticking around for another year. And the entry rates were inadequate. You know, and the city was having very difficult time recruiting people at entry. And that's because we found the entry rates were about 20% below market. And I think that was really causing the city to have a hard time getting people to come. They were hiring people above entry, but then if you were hired at step 2 or 3 or 4, then you only had 1 or 2 steps to grow before you hit that top step and were capped out. So we had some real concerns, not only with recruitment, but retention and hanging on to the talented staff that we have. The city established a compensation committee, which has just been amazing leading this effort. You can see the names of the folks on there. We've got HR representatives from key departments. The compensation committee pretty much steered the project. They've made some decisions about, where we want to go as far as market. Very helpful in informing decisions about selecting a classification methodology and plan, and setting some of our goals for the compensation plan. So the committee will continue to steer the process, and I would suggest possibly even there being a longer term role for the committee to help with the long-term administration of the pay plan. I think one of our goals is to have a system that's going to stand and be here even after we're all, we've all moved on, and I think the committee and policies can kind of help institutionalize this system. So the compensation committee is a great idea. It's been working really well, and these folks have just been invaluable to steering this project. We then did an updated market study as we were continuing to develop the system. HR Director McMahon wanted kind of just to know where we're at and how things were going and keep our finger on the pulse of the market. So we did an abbreviated study in 2024. Basically, we found that we had held ground with regard to incumbent wages. We hadn't lost any ground, and we'd actually improved where we were at. Our step 3 wages had moved up to about 91% of market. So we gained ground with regard to our infrastructure and held ground with regard to actual incumbent pay. And then based on this study analysis by the committee, we developed some recommendations for a new system. What we're recommending we do is revise the wage matrix, update the classification system, or institute a more formal classification system, and then continue to improve our position in the relationship to the market. And, one of the city's strategic goals is to be an employer of choice. Being competitive on wages is a huge step in that direction. But I don't want to overlook the fact that the city's also made a considerable investment and done great work with benefits and health insurance and these other elements that feed into total compensation. So this really deals mostly with the wage part of compensation. We're going to continue to move forward on that. What we're considering with the revised wage matrix is having more steps or more opportunity for growth. One of the things we want to do is also shift the wage matrix up so that we are better reflecting the market. So we'd love to see our entry rate be about 90% of the market rather than being 80% of the market. I think that's going to help us attract and retain folks. And then we'd like to see people able to grow for more than 4 years. We'd like to see people have wage growth for a longer period of time. That's going to help with retention. So we are proposing to increase the number of steps or wage growth within a grade. But we're going to have, basically what we're proposing is 9 steps of 2.5% rather than 4 steps of 5%. So it'll be similar growth in wages throughout your career, but you're going to start closer to market and grow for a little bit longer. And we think that that longer period of wage growth coupled with career ladders, and a career ladder would be like you're a street operator 1, then you get certain qualifications, take on additional duties, go to a street operator 2. I think we figured out with, this extended wage growth and the career ladders, we could probably have somebody experience wage growth. I think we thought for about 12 years or better. So that's really going to help us with retention and hanging on to those skilled and experienced folks. We're also considering having fewer grades. Like I said, we had, I think 73 some odd grades with only 2.5% increase per grade. We're considering consolidating that, knocking the number down to about 24 grades and having a more significant, more meaningful increase as you go up grade to grade. So if you get a promotion, it would be a much greater increase than under the old system. So that's kind of what we hope to do with the revised wage matrix. This is kind of what it might look like. And again, this is just a draft and it's probably impossible to read because the font's too small. But just to give you an overall snapshot, we may have what was 3 grades under the current system would fold into 1 grade under the new system. We've got a preliminary placement of positions, but we're going to do a deliberate job content analysis of jobs before we place them in this new matrix. And that's the work we'll be doing over the coming months here with the compensation committee. So just a quick on the updated classification system, some of the characteristics of what we plan to incorporate in the new system is it is going to be both market and job content based. So we're not going to be classifying jobs just based on the market. We're going to look at the qualifications, the duties, We have an obligation to ensure we're providing equal pay for equal work, and that jobs with similar responsibilities and similar qualifications are paid similarly. So we can't just use a pure market pricing system. If there's, say, a gender inequity in the market and we have a pure market pricing system, we could inadvertently perpetuate that inequity in our pay system. So we want a job content element of the classification. And job content will be assessed through a factor-based system. HR Director McMahon has kind of been applying some factors loosely when she's been classifying jobs all this time. So it's not going to be a great departure from what we're doing, but it's going to be a more formal system, more defensible. It's going to give department directors a little more information to explain to their employees why they are the grade they are, why their pay is the level it's at. And again, the compensation committee was instrumental in steering us and guiding us to come up with this system. One thing we are going to do is provide a discretionary pool of points that will be used very sparingly and only in unique circumstances, probably require approval of HR director and the city manager. Possibly even the compensation committee might be adjudicating those requests for those unusual classifications. And then, so the system will be market-based, and then the grade placement will be based on job content. So we really hope the system is going to position us to be more competitive with the market while maintaining or achieving internal equity. Some of the other things we're going to do is the system, like I said, it's going to be both job content and market-based. So as far as the market-based elements, we're going to calibrate the job content factoring system so that the ultimate classification outcome reflects the market. Typically, if you weight things like the qualifications required, the complexity of the job, the supervisory authority fairly heavily, it reflects the market very well. So we're confident that the job content system we're designing will represent and reflect the market and ensure that our classifications are market-based. We want to motivate our key stakeholders. We want to emphasize transparency, and we want to ensure positive communication to improve and facilitate buy-in. It typically takes folks a couple cycles to understand a pay system. So anytime you change it, it takes a while to educate people on what the new system looks like. One of the components of the compensation philosophy is we do want to motivate people. So we want to provide competitive wages. We want to provide economic growth for folks, and we want to provide a system that they understand. And again, I think the career ladders and those promotion opportunities will just be another complement to the system we're designing, so folks can know, okay, what if I want to become a 2 or a 3? What do I need to do? What duties can I take on to advance and grow in my career? Our market position, basically, incumbent wages have held. We're going to continue to increase our wage growth, and it's going to be chasing a moving target. That's one of the things we have to think about, is we're trying to catch up with the market, but during this time we're trying to catch up. The market's going to be moving out, so we're going to be chasing a moving target, and I think it's important that the commission consider that, and we continue to fund these enterprise-wide increases to keep our wage ranges current. And I think that may be one of the reasons we fell behind, is maybe historically we didn't fund those types of, cost of living or wage matrix increases. And it's very difficult as an employer if you fall behind the market to catch up, and you start seeing increased costs because we have turnover, training costs, service quality costs. So it's our recommendation that it's much more cost effective to keep pace with the market and hang on to the talented and skilled folks that you have than to start losing folks and try to play catch up with the market. So our transition plan, what we're going to be working on in the coming months is we are developing a new classification system. The compensation committee is working through this. We did push things back with the project a little bit just to align with the software implementation, but that's actually been a good thing because I think that's going to give the committee more time to be more thoughtful and methodical and have a much more involved process. So that's good. We're going to update job descriptions as needed or as opportunities arise. We're going to update organizational charts. Ms. Obitz, that was here, did a great job pulling all those org charts together. So that's been super helpful to this effort. And then again, we're going to recommend that the commission work to continue to keep pace with the cost of living and wage growth so we don't fall behind. We've got a bit of a gap to close with the market, so at some point we're going to need to maybe try to increase wages in excess of maybe what the cost of living was to close that gap. I kind of recap most of the changes we're talking about with the wage matrix already. And then we've already looked at the compensation philosophy, so I won't walk you through that again, other than to say, this is really going to be tied to this. We're looking at offering career development, professional progression opportunities. That's the career ladders we talked about, offering competitive wages. That's all this concern we have about where we relate to the market. So the compensation philosophy has just been a great tool to drive this effort and has provided good and clear guidance, I think, for our efforts and for the compensation committee going forward. So one of the things we're going to need to do, and the compensation committee is going to be talking about, is organization-wide communication. We're thinking that communication probably has to start sooner rather than later. At some point, we're going to go from this system where you have 5% steps to 2.5% steps. So we want to make sure, people aren't harmed by that transition. I was counting on my 5% step next year, and now you're telling me it's going to be 2.5. So we'll have some sort of transition plan to ease that for employees. We want people to understand why they're classified the way they are, how the new system works. So that'll be another big effort we're going to be embarking on, is just making sure that our supervisors and employees understand the system. Their buy-in and their support of the system is going to be critical. And again, I think the compensation committee has been a huge step in that direction, because those are credible, knowledgeable folks that have been leading the process. So our next steps, just to give you a sense, is we're going to the 2024 step adjustments occurred. I mean, all that's taken place. We're going to finalize the new classification system. The compensation committee is going to be looking at what we call classification benchmarks. So we've classified a few jobs, and they're going to be looking at those benchmarks at our next committee meeting coming up. We're going to design a new 2025 proposed wage matrix, and then we'll finalize the reclassifications, cost of living, make recommendations going forward. So I just wanted to open up. I know I covered a lot of information very quickly. Let's see if anybody has any questions, comments, guidance from here.
For the questions, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think that Jim and his team at CMS have done a really, really good, thorough job with our folks. And I think from a broader perspective, to put it into context, 2.5, 3 years ago, we were talking about stabilizing the organization. And through various actions by the commission to bring back structure and systems across the enterprise, whether we're talking about the budget process or the audit process, the development review process, enterprise-wide software upgrades, ADA transition plans, and services across the board. Pay matrix and classification system fits within that overall effort. And I think this is excellent work, and I think it's really good progress. And in not too long a period of time, we're going to be reporting back to the commission on what our recruitment and retention challenges were 2.5 to 3 years ago compared to what our numbers are today. And you're going to see that the decisions that you've made have made tremendous progress across the enterprise.
Questions from the commission?
Sure.
Commissioner Logan.
So in your, I'm just kind of curiosity, in your slide on key considerations, you talked about an emphasis on transparency. Can you talk a little bit about that? What by transparency, what do you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Logan. A couple of things we mean by transparency is one, this wage matrix, once it's done, is going to be published. So people will know, and that's a significant move on the city's part, because a lot of times cities, you're committing to those steps. You're committing to say, okay, if I work here for 5 years, I'm going to be making $25 an hour. So that's a commitment. I'm not saying it's a contract or anything, but we're putting that out there. And a lot of jurisdictions maybe don't have the ability to be that definitive about what they're gonna pay. You know, say, here's the range and we'd like to pay you in this range, but you know, it's all contingent on funding. So that's why I think about the first element of transparency. The other element is related to the classification system is we're actually gonna produce or have as part of this job content factoring system, a job evaluation form or how each job's factored right now. So we'll actually have a document that says, okay, you know, your job's a grade 13, here's why. So directors can share that with folks and people can understand. Whether they agree or not is a different question, but at least they'll understand, okay, that's why my job's, you know, grade 13 and, you know, Commissioner Reed's job's a grade 16. I understand why. So that's the other element of transparency, is trying to help directors or managers better explain why people are the grade they are. And again, that comes with the risk too, because then people may want to argue about, well, geez, I think I should be a grade 14. But the committee decided that openness and transparency is important, and we want to have that. So those are probably the two main elements, I think, with transparency. And then I think the other thing we may try to do is, you know, develop or update some pay plan policies that are really straightforward about how we handle pay if somebody's promoted or demoted or new hires. Just to bring to light some of our pay practices.
Well, so when you say that matrix will be published, do you mean like internally within the organization or for all to see?
I think it'll be for all to see, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the city what our plan is there.
Right now, we have it just internally and on the intranet. We can talk about if that's helpful.
For many years, I think matrix, the matrix of the city was published on the HR's website.
On the website.
It's all public information.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So thank you.
We can also add it to our annual budget document as well, if that's, you know, helps it become more transparent. But we can talk about that with the HR director and the city manager, what the commission wants.
Yeah. I would just add that all of this will be coming to the commission for adoption at some point, consideration.
On the topic of lobbying, is there an opportunity maybe for some of the membership of that compensation committee to rotate? Because I think one of the things we talked about is, you know, building in leadership pipelines, giving people opportunities for other experiences. And I think a committee like that would be a great opportunity to get multiple perspectives across the organization periodically, just so we're not getting, you know, groupthink happening on something as critical as this.
Mayor Pro Tem, I think that's a great idea, and we do want to have continuity on that committee as well. And you know, we haven't formally decided the committee is going to be a standing responsibility, but I think having folks that are trained, so if like a couple new people come on, while there's experienced folks on there, and then a couple people go off, I think that would be good. And you know, some of the things we've considered, like I mentioned, is maybe they could be support to, you know, HR Director McMahon and City Manager Burton on pay exception requests or making some decisions regarding changes to the system. Found them to be very valuable with this part of the process. So I think that's a great idea. And that may be one of the things, again, if our leaders agree, we could, you know, maybe draft a charter or policy for that interim committee.
That would be the intent. Yeah.
Great. All right. Anything else? Okay, we'll open this item up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to our final item. Thanks so much, Mr. Smith. We appreciate it. We missed seeing you.
I was going to say, I thought you'd be sick.
Well, I mean, normally when I do it's not below himself, but all right. Final item is discussion of a resolution adopting policies for electronic meetings. And this will be led by the Commissioner Claiborne.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. I'm not really sure why this happens to my presentation every time, but the font seems to hate me every time I try and screen share it, so.
Are you sure Chris Cooley hasn't been in there?
He may have been. So if some of this is looking wonky, I apologize for that, but, much of this presentation you've already seen at the July 10th discussion, so I'm going to breeze through the beginning just to get everybody up to speed. Wait, you actually dropped in here. I'd like for you guys to at least be able to read it. So bear with me for just a moment. You just copy better. How can I go to there? Oh. Hey, look, this one works.
If I could just interject real quick, I got an update. I think the commission is, want to hear the contractor working at the two-time building. They got the curb painted and the sidewalks are open. As of today, I believe, or maybe online. Filler time.
Well, see, I just needed Amanda to share it, so. So as I said, we've already discussed a lot of these key points, so I'm gonna just breeze through them and get everybody up to speed. In the past legislative session, modifications were done to the Montana Code Annotated 23214, which requires class 1 and 2 cities to now record the governing body needs to record their public meetings in both audio and video format. The city here has been doing that for quite some time, but the commission has given direction over the years that they would like to pursue a policy associated with this and implement beyond what the statute requires. So all public meetings, including boards and committees that are city boards and committees, would also be associated with this policy. And that we would also make the AV recording the official record of that public meeting, and all records pertaining to that meeting would comply with the appropriate MCA, which is 23212. Policy considerations that were discussed at the previous meeting include defining the acceptable methods. So hybrid is often a term you get bandied about how we describe an in-person component along with an electronic meeting. Ensuring that we comply with all relevant public participation laws. And then making sure that we've accounted for technological failure. As we've seen many times tonight, stuff happens. Technology is not perfect, but we need to be able to still offer opportunity for public participation and for the commission to participate in the event of a technological failure. And establish, if wanted by the commission, the governing body, any self-governance or accountability measures within that policy. And again, the official public record, which means we need to comply with statutory requirements. These were the sections that were discussed at the last meeting. I won't go through all of these, but it did talk a little bit about the requirements for an in-person meeting. Some communities do that in addition to an online meeting. The member participation requirements, so visibility, voting. Some of these measures are pretty standard amongst every resolution that I looked into. Some were modified according to the community's needs or desires of the governing body. So we did have a discussion about all of that. And then there were sections associated with the commission in particular having a need as the governing body that will be required to make decisions in a way a board or committee may not, due to unforeseen circumstances, including non-emergent or emergent matters, may need to hold an all online meeting and therefore not comply with the policy as stated. Through the work with the city attorney's office, we also talked a little bit more about extenuating circumstances for technological failure and the opportunity for public comment. So that was also within this document. I did have a follow-up conversation with a couple of you asking for references as to where we went to comparable resolutions or where we at the office where we did our research. So we obviously stuck with the larger communities here in Montana. So you see Bozeman, Missoula, Billings. North Glen, Colorado was the community that I did speak to at the last discussion because they are about the same size. and situated similarly to Helena. And so we looked at theirs simply because I wanted to see what other communities outside the state's borders, because quite frankly, not to say that Montana is behind the curve on some of this, but we are in a way. So some of the larger states with larger metropolitan areas have been using technology like this for quite some time. So you'll see here that we did also use MSU Local Government Center as always, and the National Organizational Groups for Parliamentarians, and then Robert's Rules of Orders has done a white paper on this as well. So after the 10th discussion, I asked the commission to give me further direction or amendments or edits that you'd like considered. And I did receive a couple of responses and from members of the commission, and I've highlighted those here, the proposed changes to the current resolution language. And that would be to strike section 9, which is pertaining to the minimum number of meetings of in person for a member of the commission. Per annual year or calendar year. And those meetings, as you well know, are posted annually. We have those listed for everyone. Strike section 13 was the other, and these are fully strike both sections pertaining to the in-person attendance requirement for specific topics. So as we discussed at the last meeting, this was simply an idea I'd seen some communities adopt where matters of particular import, the community or the governing body determined that certain matters such as reduction in personnel or their final budget adoption, quasi-judicial matters, that type of thing, where there may be a large contingent of the community that would like to weigh in, that those meetings would require the governing body to be in. So when looking at section 9, I just put this on here, and I'm recognizing now that it's big. So this is what section 9 looks like in the current document. You'll see that it's highlighted in a couple of different colors, mainly because I highlighted in one color to show that that was the proposed change, this section to be struck. And then the stuff in yellow is based upon the last discussion, things you wanted considered added. So section 13, same thing. This information is also in your packet. I apologize, it's so small. So what I'm asking for tonight is a discussion on this topic. I recognize that the mayor is not here. And so there would be also an opportunity for further discussion later on down the road, including at the August 26th, if that's what the commission's will is, to bring it forward for further discussion and a vote at that regular commission meeting. But I would ask for discussion at this time and give me further direction or edits.
Thank you. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I proposed the strike of 9 and 13. To be clear, I'm happy to discuss and compromise is certainly on the table, but my job that I do aside from here is entirely online. I think the pandemic had some horrific things that happened, but one of the things that was less horrific is the ability to participate using technology. And I think it has changed work for so many people. And more importantly, it's expanded access. And I think we have seen people attending online to our meetings who previously did not come in person. And I think to me, the point is participation. How you do it is up to you. I think it's an artificial barrier. And as I noted in the last meeting, as a person who started my tenure on the commission as a single parent of a young child, I had to be home because I couldn't afford childcare. A back of the envelope calculation, $15 an hour for the number of meetings we have a year. You're looking at least $1,000 in childcare to be here all the time. And that's on top of your regular childcare needs. So I feel like people are able to make informed decisions about their ability to participate in the way that works best for them. And I would hate to see us presumptively restrict that for people based on our preferences, today. And I'll just echo the words of Commissioner Logan on a completely different topic, where he said, the 5 of us might think something is a good idea, but what about all the people who think that the way it's going right now is just fine? And I did ask her if I could use that reference. And I think, we are sitting here today in these seats, but for the people who come after us, I would hate to have what may be perceived as a barrier put in place when we really don't. And so again, I'm happy if we're worried about participation at all. I'm comfortable with talking about a minimum of meetings to attend, period. That's fine with me as far as self-governance goes. And as far as the types of meetings that we would require in person for, I understand the spirit of it, but I think if there's someone who is able to participate but can't physically be in the room, I don't see why we wouldn't allow them to participate, particularly when the voting structure, when you are down a commissioner, when you have a 2-2 vote, that's a hair more complicated than when you have all 5. So that's what I got.
Other comments or questions?
Thank you very much. With regards to this document, thank you to the Madam Clerk for putting this together and for all the research that went into it. I appreciate we already talked about section 9 and 13. With regards to a minimum, I am open to negotiation, but I know that we're not full-time. We're not full-time commissioners. We all have day jobs or other things going on outside of the commission. My job has to travel, not all the time, but it seems to be like once a month or once every other month. And I do appreciate the fact that we have Zoom abilities for participation from citizens online to follow along. I always take a look at who's participating. It's nice to see that the media, there are citizens that are listening in, and I think it's opened up the door. Talk about this word transparency. Communicating if we're not going to be here, I think is important. Being able to be online, I agree with having your camera on. Having a minimum, struggle with because we are not full-time. I would be interested in a lower percentage. With regards to topics and weight and gravity, such as a budget meeting, reduction personnel, etc. I think I could have a discussion about that as well. But as someone who works full-time and travels a bit for work, I think it's nice to be able to have an online meeting, but to be here when I can. I think we all make a really good effort to be here, but I prefer a lower percentage in terms of a minimum, if eliminating that all completely and trusting each other as adults that do have lives. But those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm probably gonna not say a lot till the meeting that we actually vote on this, but I thought a lot about it in over the last few weeks, and I don't think I could support getting rid of section 9 and section 13. I think, as I said at one of our earlier meetings, if we take this portion of the resolution, what it's addressing is essentially remote participation. And so I took it to the extremes. Would we as a commission be comfortable with somebody representing citizens 100% of the time remotely? Then I asked about the other. Would we be comfortable with requiring 100% in-person participation? One of the things that I've found in the state of Montana over the course of the last few weeks and days is that most put it as the rule is in-person participation at meetings, and the exception is remote participation. It's clear from Missoula, Bozeman, Billings. Actually, just found out today, Great Falls has that expectation as well. Butte, my understanding is their chambers are not set up for remote participation on the part of the electeds. So it's, well, that's true of Great Falls as well. But so all of theirs is 100% in-person participation. Kalispell, can't remember where Kalispell was at. Too many municipalities running around in my head. But I think they all make an expectation, which is what we're really doing here, is we're making an expectation as a commission that we're communicating our expectation, and all of them say something along the lines of, which I probably can't, something to the equivalent of council members are expected to attend meetings in person, absent authorization of presiding officer as described in the following paragraph, blah, blah, blah. But there's some sort of statement of expectation that in-person meetings are the rule, and if you want to promote in, it's the exception. And so I think that the particular resolution that we have here would probably be far more generous than pretty much any other community in the state. So, I said I wasn't going to say a lot, so I'm going to end it there. But I do have a few more comments that I'll add when we ultimately decide this. So, thank you, Mayor Person.
One question for Ms. Claiborne, and then maybe a couple comments. We have about 50 meetings a year. Is that accurate?
Mayor Pro Tem, it depends on the year. If we're counting joint work sessions, which operate a little differently, it's anywhere between 50 and 60.
So I guess to simplify the math, we'll say minimum of 50 meetings a year. So under this resolution right now, and I think I could just jump to section 9 and section 13, which seem to be kind of the sticking points. Section 9 says a member may not attend more than 50% of an entity's annual public meetings by electronic means, unless any absences exceeding 50% are due to any of the following reasons. And there's some pretty extensive reasons: military service, illness, or other medical condition, or in care of a loved one with illness, medical condition, death of a relative, emergency, unforeseen employment obligations, inability to obtain child care for a minor child, or any other matter of significance is determined by the presiding officer or with a 2/3 vote of the entity. So essentially we're saying in here that if you are going to attend more than 25 meetings a year via Zoom, they have to fall under this exception criteria. Is that accurate?
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, the intent of that language was yes, that when looking at other communities, I tried to strike a balance with what I saw as very strict policies in some communities, and then some that were less defined. And so offering this opportunity and still giving the body some ability to extend, because stuff happens, and beyond 50%, who knows? I mean, I in my experience working with the commission, I've never known actually any commissioner to reach that 25 mark actually to this point. And I've never also known the current mayor to say no to anyone ever attending online either. I think in the spirit of that, especially speaking with the mayor on this resolution, he wanted to maintain that as well.
That's helpful. I think, first I would say, I think that prioritizing giving the public as many opportunities as possible to participate and observe the proceedings online or in person or recorded on YouTube is of the utmost importance. And I think that we actually have really been a leader statewide in providing that access. It's something we were modernizing even before COVID happened. And so I think including it in the resolution is appropriate and very much in the spirit of what the delegates of the Constitutional Convention wanted to see happen, in ensuring that all deliberations happened in a public setting where the public could participate. I will say that I would not be in favor of striking section 9 or 13. I think that 50% is a pretty flexible number, and if there's a situation in which you require more that falls under these exceptions, or bring it to the body or the mayor, and I think that there's would be more than enough flexibility to consider, any of those extenuating circumstances. I do think that as public servants, we have an obligation to be available and accessible to the public, while also complying with the Montana Constitution to publicly and thoughtfully great issues before us. I think that all of us have had to take a meeting on Zoom before, and even when you're on Zoom, deliberation is not nearly as robust when some are online and some are in person. It is something that we just have to deal with, and frequently that's also when we will say, okay, if we have a really tough issue or issue that needs more discussion, we will move it to another meeting where everybody can be in the room to discuss that, because the conversation is substantially different when you're face to face and working out issues. I do think that this resolution does provide some significant flexibility. It essentially says that on average you're in person 2 meetings every month. And that, we are part-time. I too travel for work almost every week all over the state. I'm frequently driving back from Wolf Point or Baker or Miles City just before we get to our meeting starting. And so I fully can empathize with the need for that flexibility. But I do think that it is a privilege and truly an honor to be able to go to our fellow citizens and say, I would like to be part of the process and representing our community. And I think that, we have an obligation to be available to them, whether they walk in through the door and want to stop us on at the meeting on the way out, or provide public comment. I think that it's important that we're available, and I think that within this resolution, we currently have a lot of flexibility there, more flexibility, it seems, than most any community in Montana right now. I think Bozeman was a maximum of 4 Zoom meetings a year. But I think that's the significance of Section 8 for me. In terms of Section 13, it required that no member of the commission may participate by means of electronic communication in a meeting in which the commission is attempting to take final action on the following: adopt a budget, make a reduction in personnel, establish, increase, or renew a fee or assessment, approve a major subdivision, or address a quasi judicial matter. I think this goes back to the deliberation piece. For some of those, we are required, we're always required by law to have thorough deliberations, but particularly on the quasi judicial and major subdivision piece, we really have to ensure that we are having that public discussion and there is a discourse happening. And in terms of the budget and reduction in personnel and increasing or renewing a fee or assessment, that is really at the heart of all of the things that we do and decide. And it's important that a member of the public can stand for us and give us their opinion when we're making big decisions that impact thousands of people. So just my thoughts. I know that we're not making any decisions tonight, but I do think that 50% of meetings is not excessive. And I think that we're providing flexibility here that is beyond what most municipalities are providing statewide. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Lee.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would just, for consideration at the next meeting, the use of the word obscene for childcare. Could we propose an alternative wording if that is to be considered for adoption? I could find it, I just couldn't afford it. So I would say obtain isn't really the point if we were talking about that being a constraint for someone. So maybe afford is the word, but if there is another community that has language that would address more than just the ability to find it to happen.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioner Reed,
Thank you. Any other comments? Great, we'll open this one up for public comments. Yes, Mr. Piper.
Mayor Pro Tem has it. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Commission. Since I chair the biggest committee under the city, thought that maybe my input could be valuable. So I kind of read this and I'm using my own assumptions. I'm not a lawyer, so if my assumptions are incorrect, I'd be more than happy to have the conversation outside the meeting. But my understanding is that since the HCC is chartered under the city charter and we're independent of the commission, we can develop our own policy under Section 2. And I'd be happy to work with the legal office to make sure that that complies with law. But my understanding is the rest of the policy would affect the HCC, and that's the assumption I'm using in this comment. So I would be in favor of striking Section 9. I think as a chair of a group that mostly works over Zoom, it would be difficult for me to follow up with all of those people to get a personal reason as to why they were over the 50%. And in reality, that would either fall to the chair or our staff liaison. I don't think that that is the best use of the time of the limited time of the staff that we have. So because we have so much participation over Zoom, I don't know if some individuals would stay on if they were required to come to half the meetings. Prior to the pandemic, when we didn't have the Zoom option, our attendance was abysmal compared to now, and that Zoom option is very helpful. And I just fear for the possibility of not meeting quorum in the one time a month we get to meet and not be able to pass any business. So yeah, I would be in favor of striking Section 9 if that pertains to all the other committees under city jurisdiction. So the other concern I had was the video requirement. If I remember right, it was while they were voting. In our procedure, we do a roll call vote for all final votes anyway, but we have had issues specifically when we were meeting 100% remote. If people had their videos on, the meeting would crash because so many people are on it. That could be a concern to me if I'm trying to get a vote through in the middle of a meeting and members are dropping off because of their Wi-Fi or whatnot. So if there is a video requirement in there, I would suggest dropping that maybe in favor of a roll call, because if they're present enough to vote audibly, I guess you could assume that they're present in the meeting. So that would be my 2 cents. So, thank you.
I'm open to it. I think that a lot of this was, well, but because of the public participation, we want to see that citywide. I think that in terms of like 9 and 13, an expectation for the commission. I don't know if you have thoughts, but I'm that's where my head was for those sections.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, yes. So the intent was for the governing body of the city that there was going to be special consideration within the resolution. And Mr. Kuiper and I have spoken outside this meeting about getting together once I had a good idea of where this was going with all of you. He and I meeting and discussing some of these more unique issues that HCC faces given the size of the body. And then bringing that information back to you all about the unique scenario with the HCC and the boards and committees, recognizing that they are not the governing body that are held to essentially a higher standard due to the decisions that they are making.
Any other public comment? Yes.
Yeah, John Jones, Legal Women Voters. And I just have a question, empirical question, coming from my days as a teacher and online versus in-person kinds of teaching experiences. And I'm curious if there's any information available, and I'm not looking for an answer, but just something to pose. You made it as a statement of fact, and I know you're an educator, Mayor Pro Tem, and so I wondered about the quality of interactions that occur in the deliberation process online versus in person. And I wonder what kind of data there might be out there available, maybe analog in the student information. And then likewise, a different question, I think, is the understanding of the public of what's going on online versus in person. I know those sound like hair-splitting things, but it's a democratic process question, it really is. And so what's the quality empirically of in-person versus not in-person deliberation? And what's the quality of in-person versus online or Zoom interactions with the public? I doubt you're going to find anything like that second. Just questions to pose. Maybe I can bring it back to my leadership someday.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. I guess that.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem. See, I'm asleep at the wheel up here with I have one hand raised. Jacob, if you could please state your full name for the record.
Go ahead, and if you could
Hi,
please.
my name is Jacob Krusovich. Last name spelled Krissovich. Before I make my comment, I have a point of clarity just because it was a little difficult to hear at one point. Would this policy change about mandatory in-person attendance, you know, the 50%, would that apply to committees or not?
Well, since this is public comment, we'll hear your full public comment, and then if there's a member of the commission that would like to direct your question to staff to further answer that, we can do that.
Okay, so my comment is, so I'm currently a member of the ADA Compliance Committee. I'm not making this comment in that capacity. I'm also chapter president, the Helena chapter president of the National Federation of the Blind. And as a person with a disability, there's transportation and getting to and from meetings is quite difficult. There's only a handful of options to us. Walking, which from my house, due to the lack of, you know, I can walk up Villard, there's no sidewalks. It's not safe. I can walk up Benton because I live down by Bill Roberts. I have to cross the railroad or the railroad tracks. It's a real narrow crossing. It's not safe. So realistically, I have to take the transit, which just the 2 miles from my house to the city county building takes 40 minutes to an hour to get there. So that means for a 2-hour meeting, it goes from 2 hours for individuals like myself that have disabilities to a 4-hour experience. I work full time. That's a very tall order. So I think one thing that is getting lost in this discussion is individuals like myself with disabilities. This practice would be discriminatory if, you know, and if not discriminatory, at the very least exclusionary. You'd be actively deterring people with disabilities from attending the meetings, when realistically we should be encouraging people with disabilities or anybody else who has transportation issues to be participating in committees. And even if it doesn't apply to even if it doesn't, you guys change it, it doesn't apply to committees, it would also dissuade people with disabilities from running for commissioner. Thank you for allowing me to make my comments.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, do you want to speak to the committee piece?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, commissioners. So that is a commission decision, whether this is universally applied to all public meetings, including boards and committees. At this time, there is no distinction within the language of the resolution. It was my understanding that the goal was to apply this to all public meetings. Now, having said that, as has been discussed throughout the evening so far, Section 9 does have all of those stipulations underneath the subsections that offer the opportunity for someone to request to be given the ability to participate. It doesn't have a limit beyond 50% of those meetings online. And that is up to at the discretion of the presiding officer, which would not just be the mayor in this case, it would be the boards and committees presiding officer. And to speak of,
You've been gossiping from me.
Always back.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So that would include at the discretion of the presiding officer for extenuating circumstances or a supermajority of the body. So those individuals, I was asked a question, a very pointed one, why would you need both? Well, there may be a presiding officer that does not agree with the extenuating circumstance, but the greater body does. So that option is available. And again, there's no limit beyond 50%. So that means up to 100% of those meetings would be accommodated. There is actually within the language of the resolution, I believe it's section, because it's a beast, 22, 23, or section 22 or 23 states that we would comply with all ADA laws, state, federal, local. So those accommodations are applied universally. That is a city that we are required to comply with those laws. And that includes offering all accommodations to our meetings for both public and those that would participate as members of that body.
So as I understand it, currently, under this section 9, if someone had a disability or a medical condition, they could still attend 100% of meetings via Zoom.
That was the intent in the language and what was written, yes.
Whether they're on the commission or on a committee.
There is not a designation, so yes, it would apply to all public meetings and all entities or bodies.
Any final comments or questions? Okay. Seeing no further comments or questions, we will move on to any general public comment. So public comment on any item that was not discussed today. Seeing none, appreciate everyone for hanging in through this long agenda. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.